The cold woke her first. Then the pain. Hannah opened her eyes and saw nothing but white frost on glass. Her body felt like stone. Every muscle screamed as she tried to move. The cryopod was not supposed to wake her like this. Something was wrong. She heard alarms, distant, muffled, the kind of sound that meant death was coming. The pod door cracked open with a hiss of frozen air. Hannah fell forward onto the metal floor. Her hands and knees hit cold steel. She coughed and tasted blood in her mouth. The emergency lights painted everything in angry red. For a long moment, she just lay there. Her mind was still waking up. Cryosleep did that to people. It took time for the brain to remember how to think. The ship. She was on a ship. The Eternal Dawn, a colony vessel carrying 12,000 people to a new world. She was a maintenance engineer. She fixed things. That was her job. But right now, she could barely fix her own breathing. Hannah forced herself to stand. Her legs shook like leaves in wind. She grabbed the edge of her cryopod and pulled herself up. The alarm was still screaming somewhere in the distance. She looked around. The cryobase stretched out before her. Thousands of pods lined the walls in neat rows, stacked 3 high, each one holding a sleeping person. Families, children, old people, young people. All of them trusted the ship to keep them safe. All of them were still asleep. Only Hannah was awake. The emergency protocol had chosen her. As a maintenance engineer, she was flagged for early awakening if the ship faced critical damage. The system needed someone to fix things, but as Hannah looked at the damage around her, she wondered if anything could be fixed. She walked through the ship like a ghost. The corridors were empty. Emergency lights flickered on and off. Some sections had no power at all. She used her hands to feel along the walls in the dark places. The bridge was the worst. Hannah found the bodies of the crew. Captain Doan was still in his chair. His face was peaceful, like he was sleeping. But the hole in the hull behind him told a different story. A meteor strike, maybe? Or debris from something larger. The breach had been sealed by emergency systems, but not before the vacuum of space had taken everyone on the bridge. They died fast. That was the only mercy. Hannah stood among the dead and felt nothing. Not yet. The shock would come later. Right now, her engineer brain was working. It was making lists. Problems to solve. Systems to check. People to save. She sat down at the main console and began to read. The ship's logs told a story worse than she imagined. The Eternal Dawn had drifted off course 3 months ago. A navigation error sent them into the Vortex Nebula, a region of space that most pilots avoided like death itself. The nebula was filled with radiation, gravitational storms, and energy that could tear a ship apart in hours. The crew had sent distress calls. Many of them. For weeks, they begged for help. The Galactic Coalition received every message. Hannah found the response in the communication files. It was signed by 12 council members. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood. After careful review of the situation, the Galactic Coalition has determined that rescue operations for the colony vessel Eternal Dawn are not feasible. The Vortex Nebula presents unacceptable risks to any rescue fleet. The resources required exceed reasonable expenditure limits. We express our deepest regret for the 12,000 souls aboard the vessel. Their sacrifice will be remembered. Their sacrifice. Like they were already dead. Like the Coalition had already moved on and forgotten them. Hannah sat very still. The words on the screen burned into her mind. She had worked for the Coalition her whole life. She had believed in them. She had trusted that if something went wrong, someone would come. No one was coming. She was alone on a dying ship with 12,000 sleeping people. The life support was failing sector by sector. The engines were damaged. The AI core that ran the ship was corrupted beyond repair. They had power for maybe 2 months. Then the lights would go out, the heat would fade, and everyone would die in their sleep, unless someone fixed it. Hana looked at her hands. They were rough and scarred from years of working with machines. She knew every system on this ship. She had crawled through its guts 100 times, fixing problems that others said were impossible. The Coalition said rescue was impossible. Hana smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just found a purpose. She activated the ship's recording system. The camera light blinked on, and she looked directly into it. This message is for the Galactic Coalition. My name is Hannah. I am a maintenance engineer on the colony vessel Eternal Dawn. I have read your decision to abandon us. I understand your reasoning. You calculated the cost of our lives and decided we were not worth saving. She paused. Her voice was calm. Too calm. You made a mistake. Not a moral mistake. I know you do not care about morals. You made a practical mistake. You assumed we would simply die. You assumed we would accept your decision and fade away quietly. Hana leaned closer to the camera. We will not fade away. I do not know how yet. I do not know what I will do. But I know one thing for certain. You left us to die. And that was your first mistake. She ended the recording and saved it. Then she stood up and walked out of the bridge, leaving the dead behind her. She had work to do. The first week was the hardest. Hannah barely slept. She moved through the ship like a machine, checking every system, noting every problem. The list of damage grew longer every day, but so did her list of solutions. The ship was not dead yet. It was wounded, bleeding, but still alive. And Hannah was very good at keeping things alive. She sealed damaged sections. She rerouted power from places that did not need it to places that did. She found food stores that would last years if she was careful. She repaired the water recycling system with parts from broken machines. Every night, she sat alone in the darkness and listened to the ship breathe. The hum of engines, the whisper of air through vents, the heartbeat of a vessel that refused to die. Just like her. On the 7th day, Hannah made a promise to the sleeping people around her. I will save you, she whispered. All of you. I do not care what it costs. I do not care what I have to become. The galaxy abandoned us, but I will not abandon you. The ship groaned in response. Metal settling. Systems adjusting. It sounded almost like agreement. Hannah smiled again. This time, it was a little more real. She had 12,000 reasons to survive, and she intended to find a way. 3 months passed. Hannah survived. She learned things about herself during those months. She learned that she could work for 20 hours without rest. She learned that loneliness was a kind of poison, but it could be ignored if you stayed busy enough. She learned that a human being could hold more anger than she ever thought possible. But most importantly, she learned the ship. Every wire, every pipe, every panel and circuit and bolt. The Eternal Dawn became an extension of her body. She could feel when something was wrong, like a pain in her own flesh. She could hear problems in the hum of the engines before any sensor detected them. The ship was still dying, but it was dying slower now. Hannah had bought time. Time was not enough, though. She needed help. The cryopod selection took her 2 weeks. She read every file on every colonist. 12,000 people, and she needed to find the right ones. Not the strongest, not the smartest. The right ones. She found Taiho first. His file was buried deep in the restricted section. He was not a colonist. He was a prisoner. The Coalition was sending him to a penal colony on the far edge of known space. His crime was listed as political insurgency. He had spoken against the Coalition. He had organized protests. He had tried to change things from the inside. The coalition called him a terrorist. Hana called him useful. She woke him on a cold morning. The cryopod opened, and Taiho fell onto the floor just as she had 3 months ago. He coughed and gasped and looked up at her with confused eyes. "Where am I?" he asked. His voice was rough from the long sleep. "You are on the colony ship Eternal Dawn," Hana said. "The coalition abandoned us 3 months ago. We are trapped in the Vortex Nebula. I am the only one who has been awake. I need your help." Taiho stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a bitter sound. "The coalition abandoned a ship of 12,000 people?" "Yes, and you woke me because you hate them as much as I do. And because you were a military strategist before you became a political prisoner. I need someone who can think like a soldier." Taiho sat up slowly. He looked around at the cryobay, at the thousands of sleeping faces, at the emergency lights that still flickered red. "What exactly are you planning?" he asked. Hana smiled. "I do not know yet. That is why I woke you." Yuna came next. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life and technology. Her file said she was brilliant but difficult. She asked too many questions. She challenged her superiors. She did not follow rules well. Hana liked her immediately. When Yuna woke, she was calmer than Taiho. She listened to Hana explain the situation. She asked careful questions. She examined the ship's data with scientific eyes. "The Vortex Nebula," she said after an hour of reading. "Everyone avoids it because it is dangerous. But has anyone ever studied it properly?" "No," Hana said. "It is considered too unstable for research." "Unstable means energetic," Yuna said. Her eyes were bright with curiosity. "Energetic means powerful. This nebula is not just a death trap. It is a resource. We just need to figure out how to use it." The three of them work together now. Hana fixed things. Taiho planned things. Yuna studied things. They were a small team, but they were effective. Taiho spent his days studying coalition fleet movements. He salvaged the communication equipment and began intercepting signals. The coalition thought the Eternal Dawn was silent. They did not know that someone was listening. "They have already forgotten us," he reported one evening. "There is no mention of the Eternal Dawn in any recent communications. We are a closed file. A finished story." "Good," Hana said. "Let them think we are dead. The dead can surprise the living." Yuna made the first breakthrough. She discovered that the radiation in the Vortex Nebula was not random. It followed patterns, waves of energy that flowed through the region like currents in an ocean. "We can harvest this," she said, showing them her calculations. "If we modify the ship's power collectors, we can absorb the radiation instead of being damaged by it. The vortex could give us unlimited energy." "That is impossible," Taiho said. "The coalition engineers would have thought of that." "The coalition engineers never stayed in the vortex long enough to study it," Yuna replied. "They ran away. We cannot run, so we have to learn." Hana studied the calculations. Her engineer mind saw the problems, but it also saw the solutions. "I can build this," she said. "It will take time, but I can build it." The second breakthrough came from Taiho. He discovered that the gravitational anomalies in the vortex followed predictable patterns. They were not random traps. They were like rivers of force flowing through space. "If we learn the patterns, we can navigate them," he explained. "Better than that, we can use them. These gravitational forces could crush a ship, or they could be weapons." Yuna added her own discovery. Certain compounds in the nebula could be collected and refined. When properly processed, these compounds could disable standard coalition electronics, ships, weapons, communication systems. All of it could be shut down with the right application. We have everything we need, Yuna said. Energy, weapons, defense. We just need to put it together. Hannah looked at her two companions. 3 months ago, she had been alone. 3 months ago, she had nothing but anger and determination. Now she had allies. She had ideas. She had hope. The coalition abandoned this ship because they thought it was worthless, she said. They thought we would drift and die and be forgotten. But they made a mistake. They forgot what humans do when they are cornered. What do? Taiho asked. We fight back. That night, they made a decision. They would not try to escape the Vortex Nebula. They would not beg the coalition for rescue. They would not wait for death. Instead, they would make the Vortex their home, their fortress, their weapon. The Eternal Dawn would become something new, something the galaxy had never seen. A ship born from abandonment, forged in radiation, and powered by human spite. Ha stood at the observation window and looked out at the swirling clouds of the nebula. Lightning flashed in the distance. Energy storms painted the void in colors that had no names. It was beautiful. It was deadly. It was theirs. The coalition calculated that we were not worth saving, she said softly. Let us show them how wrong they were. Behind her, Taiho and Yuna nodded. The three of them stood together, watching the storms rage outside. They were just 3 people against an entire galaxy, but they were angry. They were smart, and they had nothing left to lose. The galaxy had abandoned them. Now, they would make the galaxy regret it. 80 months. That is how long it took to build a weapon from a graveyard. Hana worked every single day. Her hands became rough with new scars. Her eyes grew tired from staring at screens and schematics. But she did not stop. She could not stop. 12,000 lives depended on her. The Nebula Harvesting Array was her first great achievement. She designed it herself, using parts from broken systems and damaged equipment. The array stretched out from the ship like great metal wings. It caught the radiation that flowed through the vortex and converted it into power. The first test almost killed them. The energy surge overloaded 3 decks and started a fire that took hours to contain. Taiho burned his hands, pulling Yuna away from an exploding console. Hana sealed herself in the engine room and manually shut down systems one by one until the ship stabilized. When it was over, they sat in the darkness and breathed. We need to try again, Hana said. We almost died, Taiho replied. Almost is not dead. We try again. The second test worked. The array hummed to life and the ship's power reserves began to fill. Within a week, they had more energy than the Eternal Dawn had ever carried. The lights burned bright. The life support systems ran at full capacity. For the first time in over a year, the ship felt truly alive. Yuna wept when she saw the readings. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. But Hana was already moving on to the next problem. Energy was just the beginning. The gravitational anchors came next. These were Taiho's design, based on his study of the vortex currents. The anchors let them grab onto the gravitational forces that flowed through the nebula. They could ride the currents like a ship riding waves. They could stop suddenly, change direction, move in ways that normal ships could never match. But more importantly, they could weaponize the currents. Hana built the weapon array in secret. She did not tell the others until it was nearly complete. The system used the gravitational forces as ammunition. It reached out into the vortex, grabbed the invisible currents of force, and directed them at targets. Show me, Taiho said when she finally revealed her work. They aimed the weapon at a piece of debris floating nearby, an old satellite that had drifted into the vortex years ago. Hana activated the system. The satellite crumpled like paper in a fist. The gravitational forces tore it apart in seconds. Metal bent and twisted and folded in on itself until nothing remained but a ball of compressed wreckage. Taiho stared at the result. That could destroy a warship. That could destroy a fleet, Hana corrected. Yuna completed her own project during this time. She refined the nebula compounds into a weapon of a different kind. The substance looked like silver dust. When released near Coalition technology, it invaded the circuits and shut everything down. Engines, weapons, life support, shields, everything stopped. I call it silence, Yuna said, because that is what it brings. The three of them had created something terrifying. A ship that could harvest unlimited energy. A ship that could move through impossible space. A ship that could crush enemies with gravity itself and blind them with silver dust. The three people were not enough to operate such a vessel. They needed a crew. Hana spent days studying the colonist files again. She was more careful this time. She needed engineers who could maintain the new systems. Soldiers who could fight. Scientists who could continue improving their weapons. Leaders who could organize and inspire. She chose 50 people. Each one was awakened personally by Hana. Each one heard the full truth. The Coalition had abandoned them. They were trapped in the vortex. They had two choices: join the fight or return to cryosleep. All 50 chose to fight. The ship came alive with activity. Engineers crawled through the new systems, learning them, improving them. Soldiers trained with improvised weapons and practiced combat drills. Scientists worked alongside Yuna, developing new technologies and refining old ones. Hana watched her crew grow and felt something she had not felt in a long time: pride. These people had been abandoned, just like her. They had been deemed worthless by the galaxy. But here they were, building something impossible from nothing. Among the 50, several stood out. Minho was a young engineer barely 20 years old. He had a gift for understanding machines that even Hana admired. He improved the gravitational anchors, making them faster and more precise. He became Hana's right hand in the engine room. Jiwan was a soldier who had served in Coalition peacekeeping forces before becoming a colonist. She was quiet and serious, but her mind was sharp. She trained the other fighters and developed tactics for combat in the Vortex's strange environment. Yoonji was an older woman, a teacher who had been traveling with her students to start a new school on the colony world. She could not fight, and she knew little about engineering, but she knew how to keep people hopeful. She organized gatherings. She told stories. She reminded everyone why they were fighting. The Eternal Dawn needed a new name, something that reflected what it had become. Taeho suggested it one evening as they sat together after a long day of work. "We should call it the Abandoned Fury," he said, "because that is what we are. The abandoned. And we are very, very angry." The name stuck. The Eternal Dawn died that day, and the Abandoned Fury was born. Word began to spread through the galaxy. Not loudly, not openly, but in whispers, in rumors. Stories of a ghost ship in the Vortex Nebula. A vessel that should be dead, but somehow survived. A crew of the damned who refused to die. The Coalition dismissed these stories as superstition. Sailors talking nonsense. The Vortex was death. Nothing survived there. But the whispers continued, and some of them reached the ears of other abandoned souls, other forgotten people, other discarded lives. One day, a small transport ship entered the edge of the vortex. It was barely functional, held together with hope and wire. Inside were 20 refugees from a Coalition mining colony. The Coalition had closed the mine when it became unprofitable. They had not bothered to evacuate the workers. The refugees had heard the whispers. They came looking for the ghost ship. Hana brought them aboard herself. She looked at their thin faces, Their worn clothes, their desperate eyes. They reminded her of herself 18 months ago, lost, abandoned, alone. "Welcome to the Abandoned Fury," she said. "You are home now." The crew grew. 70 people. Then 80. Then more. Each new arrival brought skills and stories and burning anger at a galaxy that had thrown them away. Hana stood on the bridge and watched her ship transform. The Abandoned Fury was no longer just a converted colony vessel. It was a symbol, a promise, a threat. The galaxy had abandoned them. The galaxy had calculated their lives as acceptable losses. The galaxy had moved on and forgotten. The galaxy was about to remember. Hana activated the communication system and recorded a new message. This one would not be sent yet. This one would wait until the moment was right. "We are the Abandoned Fury," she said. "We are everyone you threw away. We are every life you decided was not worth saving. We have been watching. We have been building. We have been waiting." She smiled into the camera. It was not a kind smile. "The wait is almost over." The Coalition scout fleet entered the Vortex Nebula on a bright morning by Galactic Standard Time. 5 ships. Small and fast. Their mission was simple. Investigate the rumors. Find the source. Report back. Admiral Kwan led the fleet from his command vessel. He was an experienced officer who had served the Coalition for 30 years. He did not believe in ghost stories. He believed in facts. And the fact was that nothing could survive in the vortex for long. Probably scavengers, he told his crew. Or pirates using the edge of the nebula as a hiding spot. "We will find them, destroy them, and be home before dinner." His crew laughed. They were confident. They had the best ships, the best weapons, the full support of the Galactic Coalition behind them. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Abandoned Fury watched them come. Hana stood on the bridge, surrounded by her crew. The screen showed the 5 Coalition ships moving slowly through the outer layers of the vortex. They were being careful. They knew the nebula was dangerous. They did not know that the nebula now belonged to someone else. "They are in range," Taiho reported. He stood at the tactical station, his face calm and focused. 5 vessels. 5 vessels. Standard Coalition scout configuration. Light shields. Medium weapons. No match for us. "We could destroy them now," Ji-won said. She commanded the weapon systems. Her finger hovered over the controls. Hana shook her head. "Not yet. Let them come deeper. Let them see what we have built." The Abandoned Fury moved through the vortex like a shadow. The gravitational anchors let them ride the currents that would have torn a normal ship apart. They circled behind the scout fleet, invisible in the swirling clouds of radiation. Admiral Kwan realized something was wrong when his sensors went dark. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. Some kind of interference. We are losing contact with the other ships. Pull back to the edge of the nebula. Now." But it was too late. The Abandoned Fury emerged from the clouds like a monster from a nightmare. The ship was scarred and battered, its hull patched with salvaged metal. But it was massive, far larger than the scout vessels. And its weapons glowed with an energy that the Coalition had never seen. Admiral Kwan stared at the view screen. His face went pale. That is the Eternal Dawn. The colony ship? His first officer asked. "The one we abandoned 2 years ago?" "Impossible. Nothing could survive in here for that long." Hana's voice crackled through every speaker on every Coalition ship. "Admiral Kwan, I know your name. I know your file. You voted to abandon us. You were one of the 12 council members who decided that 12,000 lives were not worth saving." The Admiral's hand shook. "Who are you?" "My name is Hana. I am a maintenance engineer. At least, I used to be. Now I am something else. Now I am your reckoning." The battle lasted 4 minutes. The gravitational weapons tore the first 2 ships apart before they could even return fire. The metal crumpled and twisted, pulled apart by invisible forces. The crews never had time to scream. The third ship tried to run. G1 targeted their engines with precision shots. The vessel drifted helplessly as the abandoned Fury approached. The fourth ship fired everything it had: missiles, energy weapons, kinetic rounds. All of it splashed harmlessly against the abandoned Fury's shields. The nebula energy that powered the ship also powered its defenses. Nothing could get through. Una deployed the silence. Silver dust spread through space, carried by carefully calculated currents. It touched the fourth ship, and everything stopped. The lights went dark. The weapons fell silent. The engines died. Only Admiral Kwan's ship remained. It floated alone in the nebula, surrounded by destruction. Hana could have destroyed it. She could have ended the Admiral's life with a single command. But she had other plans. "Admiral," she said, "I'm going to let you go. You will return to the Coalition. You will deliver a message." "What message?" The Admiral's voice was barely a whisper. "Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that the abandoned are no longer accepting their fate. Tell them that we are coming. Not for revenge. For justice. Every forgotten colony. Every forsaken outpost. Every soul that your precious Coalition deemed expendable. We are taking them back." The Admiral said nothing. His face was gray with fear. "One more thing," Hana continued. "Tell them that this was just the beginning. The next time Coalition ships enter our space, we will not let any survivors escape. This is your one warning. Do not waste it." The abandoned Fury moved aside, opening a path through the vortex. Admiral Kwan's ship fled without looking back. The message reached the Coalition capital within days. It spread through the government like fire. The ghost of the vortex was real. The colony ship they had abandoned was now a weapon. A woman named Hana was leading an army of the forgotten. The Coalition Council called an emergency meeting. 12 officials sat around a great table, arguing about what to do. "She is bluffing," one council member said. "One ship cannot threaten the Coalition." "She destroyed 4 of our vessels in minutes," another replied. "That is not a bluff. We must send a proper fleet. Crush this rebellion before it spreads." The decision was made. The Coalition assembled a battle fleet. 20 warships. 5,000 soldiers. The finest weapons technology that money could buy. They would enter the vortex and destroy the abandoned Fury once and for all. The fleet launched with great ceremony. News broadcasts across the galaxy showed the powerful ships leaving port. Commentators praised the Coalition's swift response to terrorism. Victory was assured. Hana watched the broadcasts from her bridge. She smiled. "They are coming," Tayo said. 20 ships. More than we have ever faced. I know. Our weapons are powerful, but 20 warships. We will not fight them directly, Hana said. We will fight them our way. When the Coalition fleet entered the vortex, they found nothing. The abandoned Fury had vanished into the nebulous depths. The warships spread out, searching for their enemy. That was their mistake. Hana's crew had spent months mapping the vortex. They knew every current, every storm, every gravitational trap. The Coalition ships were sailing through a maze, and they had no map. The first warship hit a gravitational anomaly and broke in half. The second was caught in a radiation storm that fried its systems. The third vanished completely, pulled into a gravity well that even the Coalition had not known existed. The remaining ships panicked. They tried to regroup, but the vortex would not let them. The currents pushed them apart. The storm separated them. One by one, they fell into traps that the abandoned Fury had carefully prepared. When the chaos ended, only 3 coalition ships remained functional. They drifted near the center of the vortex, damaged and afraid. The abandoned Fury appeared before them. Hana offered them a choice: surrender and join her, or die in the nebula. All 3 crews chose to surrender. That day, the abandoned Fury's fleet grew from 1 ship to 4. Taiho began training the new crews in vortex navigation. Jiwan integrated the coalition weapons into their arsenal. Yuna studied the captured ships for useful technology, and Hana recorded a new message. This one was broadcast across the entire galaxy. The coalition sent 20 warships to destroy us. They failed. We now have 4 ships. Soon we will have more. To everyone the coalition has abandoned, we are here. We are waiting. Find your way to the vortex, and we will give you a home. Across the galaxy, the Forgotten heard her words, and they began to move. 6 years had passed since the day Hana woke alone on a dying ship. She stood on the bridge of the abandoned Fury now, but everything around her was different. The ship had been rebuilt 3 times. Every system had been upgraded. The scars on its hull were badges of honor, each one telling a story of survival. Beyond the view screen of another ships floated in formation. Some were captured coalition vessels. Others were refugee transports that had been converted into warships. One was an alien cruiser from a species the coalition had pushed to extinction. They had found the last survivors hiding in a dead system and offered them a new home. The Forgotten, the abandoned, the discarded. They had become a fleet. Hana looked at the faces around her. Taiho stood at his usual station, older now, but still sharp. Yuna worked at her science console, her hair gray at the temples. Minho commanded his own ship these days, but he had come to the abandoned Fury for this moment. Jiwan stood at weapons, ready as always. Behind them, a new generation worked alongside them. Children who had been born on the ships. Young people who had never known any home but the vortex. They carried the anger of their parents, but also something new: hope. The coalition ambassadors are requesting permission to board, a young communications officer reported. Hana nodded. Let them come. The ambassadors arrived in a small shuttle that docked with the abandoned Fury. 3 officials in fine clothes, looking uncomfortable and afraid. They walked through corridors filled with scarred metal and repurposed machinery. Crew members watched them pass with cold eyes. The meeting took place in what used to be the colony ship's main hall. Once it had held cryopods filled with sleeping dreamers. Now it was a council chamber where the Forgotten gathered to decide their future. The lead ambassador was a tall man named Sung. He wore expensive clothes and spoke with careful words. His job was to end this conflict without losing any more coalition ships. The Galactic Coalition is prepared to offer generous terms, he began. Full amnesty for all crimes committed. A seat on the council for your leader. Territory of your own, outside coalition space. Wealth beyond measure for you and your people. Hana listened. She let him finish his offer. She let the silence stretch until he began to sweat. You still do not understand, she finally said. Do you? The ambassador blinked. I am sorry? 6 years ago, you abandoned 12,000 people because saving them was too expensive. You calculated our lives and found them worthless. You moved on without a second thought. That was a tragedy, Sung said carefully. We deeply regret the decision. You regret getting caught. You regret that we survived. You regret that we became powerful enough that you cannot simply crush us. But you do not regret the decision itself, because you would make it again. You are making it right now, all across the galaxy. Hana stood and walked toward the ambassador. He stepped back without meaning to. How many colonies has the Coalition abandoned in the past 6 years? She asked. How many outposts has been deemed not cost-effective? How many ships have been left adrift because rescue was too dangerous? The ambassador said nothing. He did not have to. Everyone in the room knew the answer. You offer me wealth, Hana continued. You offer me power. You offer me a seat at the table where decisions like this are made. But I do not want your wealth. I do not want your power. I do not want to sit at your table and become part of the system that throws people away. Then what do you want? Sum asked. I want you to leave us alone. I want you to stop pretending that you own the galaxy. I want you to learn that there are some places you do not control. Some people you cannot abandon. She turned to face the entire room. Her crew, her family. The forgotten souls who had found each other in the darkness. The Vortex Nebula is ours now. But we are not stopping there. Every abandoned colony will have a choice to join us. Every forgotten outpost will receive our protection. Every soul that your coalition throws away will find a home with the Free Systems Alliance. The Free Systems Alliance? The ambassador repeated. That is what we call ourselves now. We are not enemies of the coalition. We are something more dangerous. We are an alternative. A place where people can go when your civilization fails them. The ambassador tried one more time. This will mean war. The coalition cannot allow a rival power to exist. Taiyo laughed. It was not a kind sound. You sent your war fleet 3 years ago. We captured half of it and destroyed the rest. Send another if you wish. We will be waiting. The ambassadors left empty-handed. They returned to the coalition capital with news that the peace talks had failed. War was officially declared, but it was a strange kind of war. The Free Systems Alliance did not attack coalition worlds. They did not kill civilians. They did not try to conquer territory. They simply existed. They waited at the edge of coalition space, a reminder that another way was possible. And slowly, the coalition began to crumble from within. People stopped trusting their government. They had seen what happened to those who were deemed expendable. They knew that if the cost became too high, they would be abandoned too. Some left coalition space entirely, making the dangerous journey to the Vortex Nebula and beyond. Some stayed, but demanded change. Protests spread across coalition worlds. New leaders rose who promised to reform the system. Some of them even meant it. 10 years after the coalition abandoned the Eternal Dawn, the Galactic Coalition voted to dissolve itself. The decision was almost unanimous. Even the powerful families who had run the government for centuries could see that the old way was ending. In its place, a new alliance formed, one that included both coalition worlds and free systems, one that promised never to abandon its members, no matter the cost, one that learned from its mistakes. Hana watched the celebrations from her bridge. She was older now. Her hair was white. Her face was lined with years of struggle. But her eyes were still sharp, still determined, still angry in a quiet way. Taiyo stood beside her, as he had for so many years. We did it, he said. We actually changed the galaxy. We did not change it, Hana replied. We survived long enough for the galaxy to change itself. That is all anyone can do. Isn't enough? Hana thought about the question. She thought about the long years alone on a dying ship. She thought about the first people she woke from cryosleep. She thought about the battles and the losses and the hard choices. She thought about the 12,000 colonists who had been abandoned with her, most of whom were still alive and building new lives on new worlds. Ask me again in another 10 years, she finally said. For now, it is a beginning. In her private quarters, Hana kept a small memorial. The original distress beacon from the Eternal Dawn sat on a shelf, silent forever. Beneath it, She had carved words into the metal wall. You abandoned us. We became something greater. The words had become a motto for the Free Systems Alliance. They were painted on ships. They were spoken at gatherings. They were taught to children as the first lesson of their history. But for Hannah, they were something simpler. They were a reminder, a promise she had made to herself on the worst day of her life. The galaxy had tried to throw her away. It had calculated her life and found it worthless. It had moved on without looking back. It had been wrong. Hannah looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, new ships were carrying the abandoned to safety. New colonies were rising on worlds the old coalition had declared worthless. New lives were beginning because she had refused to die. She smiled. It was the smile of someone who had found her purpose and fulfilled it. The smile of someone at peace. The galaxy was vast and cold and often cruel. But it was also filled with people like her. People who refused to give up. People who built hope from despair. People who turned abandonment into strength. As long as such people existed, the galaxy had a future. And that, in the end, was enough.